So our first song we're singing today is Abide.
For my daily bread. Son of God, hung on a cross to die, but not even death itself could hold you down, for you rose to life. Such an awesome God, so mighty, so holy, so wonderful. Such an awesome God, so selfless, so generous, so faithful you are. Such an awesome God, so mighty, so holy, so wonderful. Such an awesome God, so selfless, so generous, so faithful you are.
Became sin, who knew no sin, that we might become His righteousness. He humbled Himself and He carried the cross. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. His body the bread, His blood the wine, broken and poured out, all for love. The whole earth trembled, the veil was torn.
blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Jesus Messiah, Lord of
Talked with Renee this morning, and we're going to do a children's message instead of children's church, and she wanted to make sure I didn't forget to say that, so I got that checked off. So if I can have the kids come up here, or if you feel young at heart, there's no plant with Al Watson again this time to know how to do it. So, but if you count, I need about 16 to 18 people. So if we run out of kids, if youth want to come up, or any adults that feel like they want to participate, that'd be great. All right, so what I need is probably, first thing I'm going to do is start out with, I've already been asked with what's up here in the back. I think Selah's asked me at least 3 times what all the gloves are for. Does anybody know what this is right here?
A baseball bat. No. Mitt.
Close, yeah.
Mitt.
Glove. A baseball glove.
What do you notice about this glove?
Is that it's...
Why don't you look at it closely and tell me? Just go ahead and touch it. It might look like it'll break, but it won't. Tell me about that glove.
It looks old and maybe even used for a very famous old baseball player.
Oh, well, that's my baseball glove, softball glove. And thanks for calling me old. But if you want to call me famous, that's great too. I've had this glove for a while. I probably have had this glove as long as I've known Randy and Debbie. When the church first had its first softball team, it was about the time I got this glove, so it's been around for about 30 years. I've even asked for softball gloves for birthday presents, but I'm still playing with this glove. So, yeah, it's seen its better years. All right, I need a couple volunteers. I'll let you volunteer for other things too. You've been asking me, come on, Selah. And Ezra, we want you to come on up here, all right? All right, so let's do this. Ezra, I want you to stand over here. Let's start out with the glove just like that, okay? You ready? Come over here. All right, now, how many people think that the glove is going to catch the ball? Now, if it's a brand new glove, like the Brennies have, every once in a while I get to borrow their glove, and I'm certain their gloves are so new and so perfect that they about catch the ball by themselves, but my glove doesn't do that. So go ahead and throw it. Let's see if it catches the ball. Just, oh, didn't work. All right, Ezra, go get the ball. And give it back to Selah. And why don't you put the glove, you want to put the glove on this time? Are you right-handed or left-handed? All right. You think you can catch it? All right, there we go. Let's give them a round of applause. Even though this glove is old, worn by an old person, maybe not too famous. It still can catch a ball, but what did it need?
Someone to hold it.
Yes, someone to hold it, and more importantly, what?
Something to, like, make it move and make it open.
There you go. All right, that's pretty close. It needs a hand in there to make it work, right? All right, so I'm not going to stop with that glove. I've got a few more gloves. Yeah, I have a few more gloves.
A lot more.
I've got a lot more gloves. My poor wife, she was all the things that Jess puts up with. So, all right, who likes to build things? I'll come up here. I got some things for building. So, if you want to take those, you can grab that one. Anybody like animals or want to be a veterinarian someday? Is that what you want to do? I'll give you these gloves and I'll tell you later what they're for. There's some of my building gloves. There's some of my building gloves. There's some of my building gloves. Come on up here. I got more gloves. Don't be shy. Come on. Come on, the rest of you come up here. I got more gloves. You want my snowmobiling gloves? All right. You like getting dressed up? Sure, there's my dress gloves. I need a few more volunteers. Come on, keep coming. I got
2 pairs of gloves.
There's my other kind of dress gloves. Yeah. Anybody like hunting? Well, you want to switch to hunting gloves? Do you want the orange ones or the camel? No, camel. Well, why don't you take them both? I got plenty of gloves, so you hold on to all those. You want 2 pairs of gloves? All right. How about if I give you my choppers? You got those? All right. Anybody else want to come up here and help me? I got more gloves. Taylor, come on up here, Taylor. I got these bright orange gloves. You want to put these ones on? All right, we'll run back to Mom. You want to put on my bright orange gloves? All right. Well, I'm going to go through and describe all these gloves, and I got more gloves in my box here. So I have my warm weather, heavy duty work gloves. Oh, yeah. Why don't you take those?
I'll take gardening.
Well, those aren't my gardening gloves, but there you go. You want those gloves? What's that? Too many gloves? These are my wood cutting gloves. Let's start going through that. So they're all getting disorganized now, but these are my wood cutting gloves. I've got my gloves. These are work gloves for when it's really hot. What do you notice on the backside? There's like a mesh on them, right? So they breathe. You don't like those gloves anymore? They're too long. All right. All right. So you can put those gloves back in there and go grab a seat. We'll go through all these. So you have my chopper on one. Oh, just wait here. I got to describe what the gloves are. You got to hold on to them. Once I describe your gloves, I got my choppers. I wear those in the cold weather. Those are my good welding gloves, and I have my bad welding gloves and the gloves the boys wear, but those are my good welding gloves. These are my gloves for when it's getting cool out and I need work gloves. And then you've got my nice buffalo leather kind of dress. Yeah, you can have those if you want. Dress gloves, and then go ahead and put those in there. These are my dress gloves, like I'm going somewhere fancy or a funeral. And if you like those gloves, you can trade your deer hide at S&S to get gloves like that. Those are my snowmobiling gloves. You go ahead and throw them in there. That's my orange hunting gloves. Those are my like building gloves, like carpentry, if it's kind of getting cold out, but it's not cold out. And then you got my camo hunting gloves. You already got rid of gloves. Did you change your mind, Taylor? Want some? No. And those are my mechanics gloves for it gets real dirty. I get real dirty and don't want to get them on. And you've got my favorite gloves of all. You know what those gloves are for?
No.
Those are the gloves, those knit ones are ones I just have in my coat pocket in case I forget a different pair of gloves and need a pair of gloves if I'm out and doing things. And you know what these gloves are for?
Getting out poop from cows.
No. But they do keep, if someone wants to take those, you can put them on. They're real nice and long.
Oh, yeah.
And so they are called OB gloves, for veterinarian gloves, for working with cattle. So they kind of keep your whole arm and hands all nice and clean.
Wait, what? And shoulders.
And shoulders. Sometimes they're handy. And then I even got my other gloves that are real long. You want to put those on? Those are kind of my I don't do much duck hunting, but they're my duck hunting, don't tear them apart, guys. Trapping gloves that keep your arms nice and dry. And if anybody's worried that I'm a farmer and don't have yellow chore gloves, don't despair. I have those along too. Yeah, those are nice and long, aren't they? All right, go throw them there in the box. All right. Those are brand new. I didn't bring used ones, don't worry. All right, go throw them all in the tub there. And so just share with all you kids there, what was the thing? All right, grab your seat back here, and I'll have you sit, and then we'll do one more thing. All right. So those gloves all have one thing in common. What is it? They don't work without what? I'll let somebody else answer this time.
A hand.
It doesn't work without a hand. Just like I appreciated Brandon as he's talking there, just talking about kingdom work. When we're trying to do things in our life, we need God in our life. So there's a verse out of Isaiah. We're going to talk about a few more verses. But those who trust in the Lord will find their new strength. There's not strength or the ability for any of those gloves to do anything without what? Hands. Without hands, but in our lives, without what? It's not a trick question.
What did you just ask?
So what do we need in our lives?
God.
That's right.
Jesus.
Yep, there we go. So you go ahead and sit down there. I'll keep using my gloves. You guys go back and sit with your parents or sit wherever you're at. If parents are relying on children's church to entertain their kids, there are the activity bags in the office too, if you want to grab those. So. I also could have probably done that with boots. I have different types of work boots and jackets. If you want to ask my wife, I have a collection of work clothes for every activity. It's just the gloves would all fit in a box and make their way in here. So, but coming to today, just talking really about God's strength in our life. One of the things I've experienced in my life is just a lot of things that happen, things that go on in life, and just going to share a little story. A couple of weekends ago, I was out helping. I think switch to this one at this point. Well, it was a couple of weekends ago. I was helping Gavin. He wanted to build a shelter out on a popple island, which is just high ground in the middle of a tamarack and cedar swamp. And well, Gavin was kind of figuring out the building plan. I was basically the work mule. I was out dragging out some dead cedar rails we cut in the low ground and dragging them through the swamp up onto the high ground. And to be honest, I was being grumpy, and I was just kind of upset with something that I felt wasn't really fair in life. It had nothing to do with Gavin, but I wasn't in a great mood. I even told Gavin I was frustrated and just don't take it personally. I let him know it had nothing to do with him, and I especially had to remind him of that when we realized he'd forgotten several things, and he had to hike the 3/4 of a mile back home to get them, right, Gavin? So Gavin took off, and that left me, the mule, walking through the snow and in the moss out into the tamarack and cedar swamp, pulling rails by hand. And I was just really frustrated with this thing that was on my mind. And I was just convinced life wasn't fair. I was justifying everything in my head. In fact, the more I did that, the more frustrated I got and more disappointed I got. And then I started to wonder, how am I going to get through this? And wondering where the strength was going to come to get through what was going on in my mind. And if I'm being fully honest, I was probably letting God know about my thoughts on that too. Have you ever been there? That feeling that life just isn't fair? Or maybe you're wondering where the strength's going to come to keep going. And I'm relatively an optimistic person. You know, if you have that whole proverbial glass is half full, glass is half empty, I really am the glass half full kind of person. But as an engineer, it's not even the right question, right, John? Because it's not a question of if the glass is half full or not. That's right. It's really about the fact the glass is twice as big as you need for the water. John's right. But anyways, I am kind of a glass is half full. You might call me pragmatically optimistic. I had someone tell me that once, that I just choose to be on the optimistic side when it doesn't make sense. And generally, I feel like things are going to go pretty well. If you ask me how are things going, pretty well, and I mean that. I mean, not that there aren't struggles, but I've been viewing things on the positive side, and I usually believe things are just going to work out. But that doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated and disappointed at times in life and just ask you the question, Have you ever been there yourself? Have you ever been there thinking it's not fair what happened to me? Why aren't things working out the way they're supposed to? It isn't fair what my friend did to me. Why did my spouse or child get sick or die? It isn't fair to be dealing with cancer or some other serious ailment or disease. Why did that happen to us? Why did that happen to me? Why didn't my job turn out the way I wanted? It's not fair what happened at work. Why did I have this big repair bill on the house or the car? It's not fair that so-and-so made whatever athletic or performing arts team, or that they got a better chair or have more playing time than me. Why did we have a house fire? It's not fair what happened during COVID or another period in your life. Why did God allow that to happen in my life? It's not fair what happened to my spouse. And in my family here recently, why did we get in a car accident and have all those things happen? And I'll ask again, have you been there before? I just want you to take a moment and think about a moment in your life. Maybe it's now, maybe it's in the recent past, but it's close to being real for you right now. Just take a moment and think about something in life that doesn't feel or wasn't, but really right now, if it could be current, what isn't fair in your life. And I'm going to pause there a moment and just ask you to think about that. And each of us has something, I mean, if we're being honest. And I appreciate Brandon's comment about kingdom work, because a lot of times, as a person, I think about life being fair. I like things being fair, sense of justice and all those things. But when we think about our calling in life and kingdom work, so I really appreciate that, Brandon, we're not called to a life of fairness. We may hear that in the world, but that's not what we're called to. We're called to a life of faithfulness and trust in God. And in that calling, I've always appreciated James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. In fact, I've shared on that before. I just really like chapter 1, 2 through 4. And just consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kind. And then it just goes on, because of the testing of your faith. There's a whole bunch of positive things that God will work in in each of us as we go through those trials, if we consider it pure joy. But there's a lot of times I have to be honest. What if you don't feel like you have what it takes to consider it pure joy? What if you feel and look like my old softball glove? Didn't belong to somebody famous. It's just getting worn down. It doesn't even, it's just flat, right? It doesn't even have the curvature of that softball fit to it anymore. What if you feel like you're in those tough moments, and they can be really tough? And I just, feel like, how do you consider it pure joy? What if you really don't have what it takes to consider it that? And I'll go back to the moment in the middle of the swamp, in the middle of the winter, dragging cedar rails. There's just God and myself and my emotions, and I'm just dragging rails. I'm being the work mule. And if I was being honest, my attitude was probably acting like a mule, or there's some other things that mules are called, and that probably would have been appropriate to describing my attitude. And in that moment, I was upset. And how do you consider it pure joy? And honestly, I just didn't have the drive to think about putting the right attitude on. And I'm just really wondering, where's the strength going to come to get through this? And I knew it wasn't rational in my head to be this worked up over it, but in my mind, it was real. And if you asked me in the moment, I didn't know how that situation was going to get better. So one of the things I appreciate about the Bible, a lot of things, but it's filled with so many stories, letters, and examples of how to kind of live out our faith. And most of those examples aren't about things being fair, but most of them are waiting on God, trusting Him and His faithfulness to us. And so today, just going to there we go. Out of Isaiah. So if you don't mind turning in Isaiah chapter 40, verses 28 through 31 in your Bibles or on your phone or wherever you have access to, or I'll have it up here. As you're turning there, I'll give you a little bit of time to get there. I encourage you this week maybe to read through out of Isaiah chapters 38, 39, 40, and 41. It is a really interesting passage in the Bible in the ministry of Isaiah. Really 38 and 39 are about tough times and actually a word of doom for Israel as you look through that. But then it's immediately followed by these words of comfort and the guarantee of the promise to the Jewish nation. And so that's what 40 and 41. So if you get a chance, 38 and 39 are talking about what's going on. 39's, it's a word of doom for Israel. But then 40 and 41 follow. So if you had time, read through that this week. But I'm specifically going to look at 40 verses 28 through 31. Do you not know, have you not heard, the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired, and his understanding is inscrutable, or we can't fathom it. He gives strength to the weary, and to him who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, or maybe they get to be old softball players, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired, and they will walk and not become weary. And I think looking at that promise, and going to come back to this is again coming from Isaiah, and this is about a passage on really doom and a tough future and what was going to happen in Babylon to Israel. And it was about this promise, though, of divine strength. And although it was aimed towards his people, it's still true for us today. If we think of the words, they will run, really, this is really looking at those exceptional moments in life. You have those big defining moments, those big demanding moments, those crisis moments. It's like where everything comes. It's either the greatest things or those worst things. It's the things you always remember. But God's there for those exceptional demand moments in life. But if you're like me, often sometimes there's the walk part. Walking really represents just that ordinary daily grind, the day in, the day out of the things that we have for responsibilities. And just the message is pretty clear here that if we put our weight on, or some versions have the hope in the Lord, he will be there to be our strength. If we don't, we're going to get weighed down by the things of this world, which is what I was dealing with that weekend, walking back and forth in the snow. The message is pretty clear. If we don't wait on the Lord, I'm going to get weighed down by the things of the world because I'm going to keep taking them on myself, as compared to when I'm waiting on the Lord, he'll provide a renewed strength for me. And I've got a few examples that I'm going to... there we go. I got a couple blank slides in here on purpose. A couple examples here. One is Elijah, and I'm not going to ask you to turn to these passages, but just listen as I speak. Elijah is one of the examples, if you look in the Bible, in 1 Kings 17, 2 through 5. This is after Elijah just told King Ahab there's going to be a drought, kind of really brought attention to what was wrong there. And then the word of the Lord came to Elijah in verse 2, and verse 3 continues here, and it is, leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So he did what the Lord told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of Jordan and stayed there. And this was before he performed the miracles with the widow. This is before he called down the fire on the sacrifice. Remember the water and the oil and all that, where he poured water and called down fire and burnt up everything. But that didn't happen until he waited on the Lord. Does anybody remember how long he waited? 3 years. So you think that he waited 3 years. I mean, he delivered a message to King Ahab, was obedient, went into the wilderness. If you actually read, he had his grumbling moments in there too. But he waited on the Lord for 3 years before he went back and started to perform those miracles. Another one that I pulled out of there is Esther. If you remember the story there, there's a whole bunch of things going to happen to the Jewish people. In fact, Mordecai had just rebuked Esther about her privileged stance in life and what was she going to do for her people. And in Esther chapter 4, verses 15 and 16, then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day." And night or day matters because a lot of times back then, fasting just meant during daylight hours and they would eat at night. But this is really about truly fasting both day and night. "And I and my servants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." So you just think of that, how she's basically trying to not get herself in trouble. She knew the rules, but after Mordecai rebuked her, she was willing to wait on the Lord for 3 days for that strength. And if you look at back, of course, that changed the course of the path in life for the Jewish people. But the key thing is here is she waited on the Lord for those 3 days. There's lots of examples. In fact, I got myself sidetracked finding all the places that 3 show up. So I got 3 years, 3 days. Actually, go through, there's a lot. 3s show up a lot. And so I'm not going to sidetrack us this morning, but I found myself sidetracked looking up where 3 showed up in the Bible in a lot of spots. But the other spot I want to share about waiting on the Lord is Jesus himself. In Mark chapter 1, verses 35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. That verse just stands by itself in there. Before that, he'd spent a full day of healing ministry and then went on to a multi-city journey in his ministry. But I think it's important that that verse was placed in there because we find even in the midst of doing great things, God here on earth and Jesus took that moment to pray, find a solitary place, and pray. So we find even Christ himself took time to wait on the Lord in prayer, which is, for me, still hard to understand. But we even see Christ living out that example for us. And so not only these examples, but I found this in my own life, and I think you probably found that too, that there is really strength in being faithful and waiting on the Lord. And I was reading through a few things and came back to this part right here. It's just really, yet those who wait on the Lord will gain the new strength. And so we have the promise of forgiveness of our sins and eternal salvation. I'm not talking about that part, but this strength piece is there for those who wait on the Lord. And really started to dig into what is meant by wait on the Lord. And of course, sticking in the theme of 3s, I found kind of 3 things through a lot of different articles that both Pastor Eric and Pastor Keith and some other reading that I did, I found, but that there's kind of 3 key things to waiting on the Lord. First of all, it's waiting on the Lord means taking time with God. I don't mean to challenge you, but I'm challenging myself with this. How much unhurried quality time did you spend with God in the last week, allowing him to renew your strength with whatever you're dealing with? And I'm not saying this has to be in reading the Bible, although sometimes for me it really comes through time of prayer or reading the Bible, but many times it comes from me when I'm outside doing some type of manual labor, hence the dragging the rails out of the swamp. I do a lot of outdoor things, driving tractors, working on stuff, doing physical labor, and I often find for myself, it's when I'm by myself doing those things that I keep carrying on this lifelong conversation with God. But it's only when there's that downtime of where the focus is just on him and what he's working in my life. The other thing is waiting on the Lord requires trusting him. It's relying on him. It's, thanks again, Brandon, that was a perfect word. It was putting our focus on kingdom work, putting our hope in him, and really thinking of kingdom work, putting my focus on his will and plan for life and not mine. Because I'm not going to share what the issue was, but the thing I was struggling with wasn't anything about God's plan for my life. It was about my plan for my life on something. And I think by putting by waiting on the Lord, putting trust in Him, this is really the spot I found that I end up taking on a whole lot less of that emotional and mental load that grinds me down and puts that on the Lord when I'm really trusting Him to lead in the direction that He wants to lead versus where I want things to go. And the third thing is waiting on the Lord requires talking it out with God in prayer. I really do believe prayer is probably one of the greatest works of God's people. I know for me, it's not only the power of the prayer, but one of the things it does for me is it often when I'm praying, I find myself verbally looking at life from God's perspective versus my own. When I'm talking to people or I'm just thinking, I can get pretty focused on myself. But when I'm spending time in prayer, and especially with prayer with others, I often find myself saying things out loud more from God's perspective than my own. And often it's receiving through that the ability or the relief to see the big picture and really see what God's doing. And that's where kind of the glove example comes in. Oftentimes, we may not notice it until later, because if you go to a softball game and you watch somebody catch, there's always the excitement of catching the ball, but really, it's that unnoticed hand of God in our lives, just like it's the glove. You can't even see my hand, this glove, but it's that hand in there that makes all that difference. And so that's one of the greatest things I think about prayer is just where we really start to put our focus on God's perspective in a situation. Because I'm going to go back to those things, because life isn't fair. It's not going to be. There's so many things about life that isn't fair. In fact, sometimes I remember those things for a long time. I don't have this in my notes, but I still remember 30-some years ago at the high school playoffs down in the Metrodome, a blown call caused us to lose a football game against Anoka, who went on to win the state championship. And I still think it's not fair that they blew that call. I can still remember that stuff, but that's not an important thing, but it's funny how I still remember that 30-some years later. I can still remember something being not fair. But for the more important things in life than a high school football game, it's to remember that life isn't fair. Things are going to happen. And you remember all the examples I shared and earlier, and the example that came to mind for you. The condition for having that inner strength really comes from waiting on the Lord. It's nothing that we can do ourselves, but it's waiting in the Lord. And that makes it a little bit easier to consider pure joy and all the blessings that come from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. It makes it a little bit easier to appreciate those when you're in times of bad health or loss of relationship or loss of a loved one. It makes it easier to appreciate some of those times of good health and memories with loved ones. It helps us to appreciate and value the friends we have, not just for what they are doing for you in the moment, but who they are in your life. It gives us the ability to grant forgiveness to others, not because they deserve it, but out of God working in our life to give the love and extension to them and really take that burden off your shoulders. It's to realize things like our homes, sports teams, vehicles, health, jobs, all those things that we spend a lot of time and effort on, they really are great and they are a blessing from God. But recognizing that's not what defines who you are, and it doesn't define who I am. And realizing those are really only temporary things that God has provided for us to enjoy, either for a time or a season in their life, and enjoy them for what they are, but knowing that all things in this world will eventually fade away. It also helps us to acknowledge, if we're waiting on the Lord in His timing, it helps us to also acknowledge that God has protected us or my loved ones in that moment of tragedy or an accident. Again, I wish Robin and Sue hadn't gotten so hurt, but if you go look at the vehicle, it could have been worse. And recognizing is, instead of being frustrated with that happened, realizing that's there, and there's so many times where God's trusted me, at least, where, man, I've had near misses between getting hurt or killed, and I'm still up here standing on my own 2 feet. But there are a lot of times that God has protected myself or loved ones in a way I may never know or may have never seen. Putting our waiting on the Lord, I think, also helps to realize that my joy and strength will never come from life being fair. In fact, if we're being honest, who really wants a fair life? Because fair usually means things worked out your way. So if you go back to the Anoka football team, they probably thought that call was fair. And they can celebrate a state championship. And so often with fair, usually fair means that it worked out the way you wanted it to, not the way maybe it should have. So in fact, when we really want a fair life, I would say let's be a little cautious there. Because fair would mean that Christ went to came to save us from our sins. And if I'm going to be honest, that's not really a world that I want to live in. And if we learn to kind of wait in the Lord for our inner strength, and we start to realize that my joy and the renewing that strength, it's something I'm going to need on a daily basis, whether it's for those the runs or walks in life, those exceptionally demanding moments when it feels like the world's crushing down. And although I like to think I'm a stronger person than average, I need God there in that daily grind. And it's not going to be renewed through anything that I can do, but truly through waiting on the Lord and His timing. I hope I don't have too many times to wait in 3 years like Elijah did, but I have to be faithful. If God's going to ask me to wait 3 minutes on Him, 3 days, or 3 years, I need to be faithful to that. And I'll use my softball glove here one last time. Kind of like my old softball glove, there's nothing's going to make this thing new again. In fact, if my boys know if I go up to catch a ball that's coming in hard and fast or a fly ball, it's not only one hand, but what, guys? 2 hands, that's right. Because more than once, my gloves flip backwards from the hitting it. But kind of like my old softball glove, it's never going to be new again. And it never did and never will do anything meaningful on its own without my hand or hands working with it. And it's the same for us. There's nothing that we really do on our own strength that's about kingdom work. That strength comes from waiting on the Lord. And so I'd encourage you as I'll ad-lib here because I saw Carl sitting up there in the back. We're always on the hunt for George Strait deep tracks. So Carl, I have a new one for you. Carl and I are 3 days apart. I don't know why threes. That's threes is coming into everything here. But we did go to a concert once, and some of our kids also like George Strait. But I was driving this morning to do a welcome thing at the College for First Robotics. And they had a George Strait song came on called The Threes Just Keep Coming, 3 Nails and a Cross. And I won't sing it for 2 reasons. One, I can't sing, and the second, I can't really remember the tune. But there's something about it. Essentially, there's the thing about a guy sitting on the stoop or steps or porch of like a halfway house, kind of saying something to somebody walking by about life hasn't always been this way. And there's something just about how life's gonna get fair again. He's gonna get it figured out. And the line response from the singer in this case, I don't know if George Strait wrote the song or not, but just said, that's not what it's about. There's a better way. And because the thing was about life's not always been this way, and the response in the line is, there is a better way, and then goes on to the chorus about 3 nails and a cross. So I think as you think about, have the worship team come on back up to get ready for the last song. But as we're doing that, I want you to ask you to reflect on that thing that you're struggling with, the thing that you think isn't fair. If you're like me, you probably got multiple things going on at times. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time in personal prayer before the last song. But I will say, I'm going to put this up there. I have to admit, that whole thing I'm sharing was real to me that morning. God really kind of convicted me on something, and just waiting on Him. So by the time Gavin got back from his 1.5 mile march, he came back with Matthew. And then later Andy came meandering down the trail. By the time all 3 of those guys got there, I was in a far different spot. It wasn't anything that I did. It was just really allowing God to renew my strength in an area. And I got to admit, it gave a whole lot better attitude for a more memorable day. Well, it's nothing fancy, but you can see our bulletin boards along the highway tarps, shelter that we got built there in the woods. So God worked through me on that day, and I know He'll work with each of you. So let's just bow our heads now, and each of you take a time in individual prayer. Just be praying on where is God wanting you to wait on Him, and where is He calling you to spend more time waiting on Him, and in what way. And worship team, when the right moment comes, you can just finish that time of silent prayer and do the final song. Thank you.
Please stand and join us for our last song. In the morning as I pray for the day that you have made, I have hope and I have peace, for your presence is with me. So whatever comes my way, Lord, remind me of this grace. I can face it with this hope. Jesus won't forget his own. Jesus holds me safely in his hands. Ever close, he leads me in his plan. When I can't see the way, I have hope and I have faith day after day. Jesus reigns. In the evening as I rest, I recall your faithfulness, how you never left my side, from the morning to the night. Now until the dawning sun, be the light that leads me on. I can face it with this hope. Jesus won't forget his own. Jesus holds me safely in his hands. Ever close, he leads me in his plans. When I can't every breath and every word for the glory of the Lord. If the day should test my faith, fill my heart with songs of praise. I